Before we get started showing how to do all the different options for working with package configurations, let's make sure that we have a good solid understanding of what each one is for and when and where I would use each one of the types of package configurations. So let me create, I should have just kept open my last one, but I didn't. So let me create a new package. We'll go into SSIS, tricked me there, package configurations, and enable this. Okay, so over here under next, let's just zoom in right here. I'm going to try to put this on the left so I can type next to each one of these. So, oops, sorry, talk about each one. So the XML configuration file. This one is super easy. It is, as the name implies, it is a file. It has a .dts config by default, file name, file extension rather. And this is probably going to be used for when you want to deploy this with an application. So you have a web app or you have a some type of a Windows-based application that you want to deploy, and you want a configuration file with your SSIS package so that you can assign the values of variables based on certain properties that your program assigns. Okay, this is very, very easy. If I have my choice, I will use the XML configuration file for almost all of my configurations in a small system. And that's an important qualifier, that in a small system bit. What would be the negative, you think, if we're dealing with a large server with potentially hundreds of SSIS packages and each one uses configuration files? Oh, you just get this massive file explosion, right? Where you have all these configuration files, and now you've got to deal with permissions at the file level. You have to deal with maintaining the links where the file was, and somebody not deleting the files, changing folder names, etc., etc. So when you're working with really large setups, I'm not so sure this is going to be the way you'll go. But for small systems, for when you have 10 packages and each one has configurations, this is a great way to go. When you want simplicity over ultimate flexibility, this is the perfect way that you want to go. Okay, now the environment variable. Sorry, I shouldn't have done that. I apologize. So the environment variable. The environment variable will maybe mitigate some of the need to create separate package configuration files for each package. What this one will do is you will set up an environment variable, and in your environment variable you will set what property and what value that you want. So for example, let's say that in every single package we have on the server, we have a variable named production server. Well, what we could now do is we could store the production server's value in an environment variable, and now instead of creating separate package configurations for every SSIS package, we would simply reference the environment variable. I'll show you how to do that in the next video, if that was maybe a little bit unclear. Now, that does make me wonder, does everybody know what environment variables are? In case you aren't aware, environment variables are what an application can see here at the command prompt, in their environment settings. So you could actually type the set command, S-E-T. This is what I typed in right here just to make sure. You can go to the DOS prompt, the command prompt, whatever you want to call it here, and just type in set, and you get to see all of the various environment settings. And some of these are set by Windows, like, oh, dang it. Some of them are set by application. So like computer name, that's set by the operating system. Let's see. What would be another one that we could see down here that's maybe set by an application? There you go. So SQL samples path. Okay, well that's set by an installation application. That's set by a program. And many times you'll see applications reference these environment variables by, it's not what I meant to do, by doing things like this, where they'll say percent system drive percent. So like if you were writing a batch file or you were referencing an icon, then you could actually type that in and the Windows operating system looks for an environment variable named system drive and then would simply path that part in right there. Okay, so those are your environment variables, and in the next video I'll show you how to set those. But they are, that's going to require a little bit of work, and all of your packages would of course break if the environment variable was not found. So environment variables, custom environment variables are on a per user basis. So you would have to log in as the user account your SQL Server Integration Services account is running under, create the environment variable there, make sure that it exists for all your packages. So it requires a good bit of work. You have to plan that all packages will have the same variable name and that the variable name exists at execution time. But very cool. I'll show, like I say, show you in the next video. Registry, again, you could store this information in the registry instead of in an environmental variable. The difference here is now you can assign security on who's able to access the registry events as opposed to having to log in as SQL Server user account to create the environment variable. So these are going to be very similar to one another, but again, requires a lot of planning. I would guess that most of us are going to be using this when we're dealing with lots of packages that call the same variable names. So it takes a lot of planning. Now, you application developers out there, the registry, you know all about writing to the registry or even using an environment variable. You could do those as well and then just execute a single package. The parent package variables here, we're going to get into talking about how to use the execute package task a little bit later. This would require the use of the execute package task to really get it. And then the SQL Server side of things, I'm going to show you how to do this. This would be for a lot of DBAs and developers the preferred way to manage a lot of different SSIS package configurations, because now you can actually create a separate database that does nothing except store package configurations for all of your SSIS packages. You don't have to worry about file-based permissions, whether an environment variable exists. All it's going to do is it's going to create a table. It's going to put the row in the table. It uses sort of an entity attribute value, or I'll show it's very easy to set up. Tell you what I'll do is in a couple of videos from now, I'll go through examples of using the SQL Server configuration. Okay, so that's kind of an overview of the various different types. I'll tell you what, let's do. Let's just jump in at the next video and talk about environment variables.